Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to OTJtv. It's March 26th. Today, we're going to talk about how teachers can be more inclusive and sensitive to the LGBTQ community. And we have two wonderful guests today. Our first guest is Yoshi Grote. Hello, thank you for coming. She's a lecturer on intercultural studies and gender at Doshisha Women's University in Kyoto. Thank you so much for coming. I'm sure you've all heard her speeches, plenary sessions before, but we're going to go into a lot of details and specifics about what teachers can do today. Our second guest is my personal friend, actually, Xander. Hi, thank you so much for coming. He is a transgender man who who has recent experience in how to deal with teachers, how universities and teachers can better be more sensitive, because he just graduated from college 4 years ago, so young. So he can update us dinosaurs about what's happening on the school front these days. Okay, and I see 3 people have joined us on the Zoom already. Thank you. Hello, Melody. Hello, David, Andrew. For everyone who is in the Zoom room, I apologize. We'd like to kind of concentrate on the 2 guests' speech for the first maybe 40 minutes to an hour, and then we'll open up the room for questions and such. But you can always comment or put questions into the Zoom chat if you would like. Okay. All right. So, oh, and hello, Jose. He's our tech person, because I can't do both. I can't talk and do tech at the same time. Okay, so I want to start with what teachers should not be doing or might be doing unconsciously that might be making the LGBTQ community uncomfortable. And I want to start with my own personal experience. The reason I wanted to do this session is because I did something that maybe I could have done better. And I was asking my friend Xander, oh, what should I have done? And it inspired me to do this session. So what happened in my class? On the very first day of class for a first-year students, I was just taking attendance. I was reading off the names in my given student roster. And I read off the name of this one student, which was a registered female name. And the student had to tell me in front of everybody in the class, 30 kids, that the person he had just met for the first time, say, oh, actually, I go by a boy's name now. I want you to call me this. And I was like, trying to keep cool. I was like, oh, okay, great. Thank you so much for telling me. But then I thought, oh, I forced this person to come out in front of 30 people on the first day of school. I don't know if he wanted to do that. And I felt really, really bad. And so I wanted to ask, Yoshi and Grote, what could I have done differently? What do you usually do in that kind of situation? Xander, do you want to tell me? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of the names, I can say what I do, but Xander may have some better advice. Do you want to go first?
Sure. So I've had a lot of teachers approach this differently. By far, my favorite approach to this issue was a teacher sending out like a Google Forms question thing before the first day, asking everyone in the class their preferred name and pronouns and anything else they want to say. And that gave not just transgender students, but any student the opportunity to give their preferred name and their pronouns. And then basically the teacher had their own roster to go off of rather than the school roster. So they could just have the appropriate name on the first day. And that was such a huge relief to me. So I wasn't put in that situation of, do I come out in front of the whole class? Do I let them use the wrong name? Just avoiding that situation altogether. That was the best approach I've seen.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I used to do something very similar to what you did, Sachiko, and it never turned out badly for me. However, I think after doing a presentation a couple of years ago, someone forwarded me a kind of survey. It's very similar to what Xander was, a kind of welcome survey. And I don't use it before the first class because of various technical issues. I don't usually get the email addresses of students in advance, but in the first class, I say, okay, make your name cards, as many teachers do. And I say, write whatever you want to be called on your name card, write your name on the inside of the name card if that's different. I assume that if there was a huge discrepancy between what someone wanted to be called, they could write something privately to me inside the name card. And then I just cross-reference the name card to the list I have. Yeah.
Me too. I do something similar where this came out of an old habit from the 1990s when I still couldn't read Japanese. And I would get these name rolls that were completely written in Japanese, and I still needed to take rolls. So I actually asked the students, please write your name on this piece of paper. And this evolved very, non-consciously. But what I would then ask is that to take roll, to save time, instead of taking roll for 5 minutes to save time, I would just give them a sheet, a formatted sheet where there was their name, and they would sign in English across it. So I didn't actually have to call a name. I didn't have to reveal any kind of personal selection about a name by actually calling it out. They would just sign their name across it. And that seemed to work for me. I mean, if you don't want to both not waste time in class with calling roll and getting these kids to tell you what it is that they want to be called by.
True. Yeah.
And family names are enough to cross-reference usually. And
Exactly.
then if they fill out that Google form or survey, you can see. And it's not just about this particular issue, but also, my real name is Yoasha, which when you write that down, people pronounce it Joasia. And I hated that at school. And, Sarah's hate being called Sally, and people just want to be called what they want to be called. So I think there's a million reasons to let people choose their own names.
Yeah. One thing the one thing that we do need to be careful of is if their registered name is different, you need to remember the registered name, because when you give the grades or the credit, you have to find that original name. So I'm on my paper roster, I make sure I keep both names. Yeah. And also I found with students of other nationalities, students who are not Japanese, they want to use an English first name. Like, oh, call me Sally, call me David, for whatever reason. I guess it's easier to pronounce. So with foreign students, I've been careful, or I've been conscious to say, hey, is there a name you would prefer me to use? But I should remember to use that with everyone. Okay. Another question I try to avoid using san, kun after the last name in Japanese. So I try to stick to just using first names in English. Do you guys make that conscious effort? And do you think we should be avoiding san and kun?
Yeah, to be honest, for me, it's an English teaching classroom. It's an English environment. I don't tend to throw in really any Japanese words. So I also don't use san, kun, chan, anything like that, or Mr. or Mrs. I don't like dividing by gender at all. Pairing by gender, grouping by gender, by their, I mean, apparent gender expression. I just don't feel like there's really ever a reason to do it.
Jose?
I just wanted to mention that I totally agree with David, and I was thinking whether or not I should mention it. But another issue that we have are especially Chinese students whose names are read completely differently according to Japanese readings. And when I talk to my Chinese students, I ask them, does that ever bother you? Because it would really bug me when my name gets read completely differently, and unilaterally the university says this will be your name at this university from now on. So the whole issue of name cards for Yoshi, or write your name here, how do you want to be addressed, actually works really well for foreign students too.
Yeah, and as David wrote in the chat, thank you, many ryugakusei, international students, also have their names in katakana that isn't quite correct. Yeah, it's either totally off or different pronunciation. So I like to check what they want to be called. Yeah, definitely good call. Yeah. I actually try to stick to English first name only, but one time in that class with that transgender student we were talking about, I slipped up, I said, son, and I was like, oh. I caught myself saying it in class. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it in class and embarrass the student again. So I just kind of gulped, went on. And then I privately emailed her and said, I'm really, really sorry. It just slipped up and it won't happen again. And she made a very good point. She was like, yeah, no problem. Thank you for contacting me. but why, she asked me a question. She's like, why do you feel the need to separate with san and kun, or like even know what gender the students are? And I was like, that is a very good point. That is a very good point. Another thing I need to be careful of after this happened, in order to keep, I have really bad time trying to remember names. So I make notes in my student roster. This is the girl with pink hair, the guy with, curly hair, whatever. I write, you write that, right? And if it's a gender neutral name, like Yuki can be both boy and girl. Sora can be both girl and boy. So I make little notes. Okay, this Yuki is a girl. This Yuki is a boy. Take little notes of it. Is that something I should get out of the habit of doing?
That's your personal notation, and you've interpreted their gender expression to, I mean, Xander may have a different opinion, but to me, that's like, you've seen their gender expression as female, just like you see their hair is brown or their eyes is blue or whatever. That's an aesthetic notation for yourself that, I mean, you're not sharing with others. So I think that's different to calling someone something. Yeah.
I'm not
Xander?
particularly bothered by you doing that. I guess it's just, I hope that you actively give your students the chance to correct you. Like the thing that I feel like most classrooms are lacking is like the invitation of, this is your chance to tell me. Right. So if they're given the opportunity to say, actually, I go by blah, 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 then I feel like you've kind of get a get out of jail free card because you gave them the opportunity. Right. Yeah, I also want to mention that there are a lot of non-binary students who their gender presentation might seem one way to you, but their gender identity isn't. So, there are students who might present in like a stereotypically feminine way who nonetheless do not identify as women. Like they're out there. Yeah, I guess the main thing is inviting them to tell you, giving them the opportunity. And then if they choose not to, that's their business, and you go with whatever your best guess is.
Yeah.
And it's best to do that in a private way or one-on-one?
Yeah, the only thing I would add there is go with your best guess, but in your notepad, but I would say avoid as much as possible saying, you're the girl Yuki or you're the boy Yuki, or saying, can you give me a male opinion, or what's your female opinion? Or the other thing that I hear teachers saying is like, oh, did it take you too long to put on your makeup this morning? Or those very stereotypical, very gendered comments. I think if you avoid those, then.
Yeah, I agree. Like we laugh about it now because it's like so common sense, but I used to do, I used to think it was fun. I say, okay, because there's a textbook chapter on how the two genders spend money differently. It's a whole textbook chapter. And it's about men tend to spend money on this, women tend to spend money on it's a study abroad prep class too. So I used to take that class, and I used to teach that class, say, okay, all the girls on this side, all the boys on this side, make a list of how you spend your money. And we compared and we laugh. And I was doing this like as recently as like 3 years ago. Like,
so now you can take that textbook and laugh at it in a different way, right? I mean, that's the wonderful thing about these really gendered textbooks is like, okay, let's get a highlighter out and highlight all the really stereotypical stuff. And also to raise awareness in the students. I think this is so key of like, how gender socialization works and how binary our society is and how none of them fit in that themselves. We're not just talking about gender non-binary individuals or transgender individuals that don't fit. Nobody fits in this weird world that our society is organized to be. So the more they realize that themselves, the more sensitive they tend to be, I think.
I think it's especially bad in Japan, where it's like, oh, girls are all like this, or like girls are uber expected to be feminine. Not so much on the male side, I don't feel like. I feel like the pressure to be masculine, for men to be masculine, is more stronger in Western countries, maybe. But in Japan, it's definitely like, oh, girls have to be cute and they can't be smart. That needs to change, definitely. Okay, another thing, what other things are we doing unconsciously wrong? Or what other things can we change? about the way we deal with classes or students? I think Yoshi, you mentioned like the term ladies and gentlemen.
Yep. Any kind of gendered terms for professions or ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, I get rid of all of that. I mean, even our institutions and big companies are doing that. So I think that's just modernizing. Getting rid of those stereotypical comments you make, like, you know, oh, could someone help her with that heavy box? You know, I mean, that just actively teaching gender neutral terminology like spouse, you know, or parent. Parent as well. Not everybody has a mom and a dad. I mean, my kid has 2 moms, but not even that. You know, if somebody's parents are deceased, they don't necessarily need that being, you know, rubbed in their face in the middle of class, or they live with their grandparents, or they're adopted. So slightly less specific vocabulary, you know, spouse, partner, parent, family member. Teaching that and explaining why you're teaching that, so that when students have pair discussions, they can use it and understand why they're using it, I think is a good idea.
Yeah. Does everybody do that? Everybody in the Zoom room right now, do you guys teach your students, give me a show of hands, do you guys teach gender neutral words? Andrew is thinking right now. Sorry, I'll unmute you. Andrew, what do you do in the classroom?
Oh, there you go.
Hello, to unmute myself. Thank you. Actually, about 5 years ago, I attended a university teachers workshop, and I think it's fine to say like spouse and things like that. But in terms of parents and siblings and things like that, we were told this is after the Tohoku earthquake and the tsunami. So our university receives a lot of, like, even though I was teaching at a university in central Japan, we were still getting a lot of students from the Tohoku region. This has nothing to do with gender, but it has to just to do with, as Yoshi said, some people don't have parents, and to ask somebody, oh, what does your father do? What does your mother do? How many people are in your family? Oh, just me. What happens if that's the reaction? You know, so that's my point. Yeah. That's why I was looking like I was trying to think about what's something to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So on that topic, I was wondering, should we always use partner to refer to girlfriend, boyfriend? Like I've been careful whenever I talk about, you know, hypothetical situations. So what would you do if and I would always say girlfriend or boyfriend, and I would be careful to say his or her girlfriend, his or her boyfriend, to let people know, hey, you never know. But should we just avoid that and just say partner? Is that easier, safer? What do you think? Xander, what do you think?
I mean, I prefer partner because, I mean, for a long time, I was dating a non-binary person who was not my boyfriend, not my girlfriend. They were my partner. So when I heard the question, oh, what does your boyfriend or girlfriend do? I'm like, well, don't really have a boyfriend or girlfriend. I wouldn't say I was offended or hurt by the question. It just created a awkwardness that partner didn't. If I heard partner, I knew how to answer the question.
Right. Okay.
May I ask a question about that though, Xander and Yoshi? Yeah. When you get those questions from people, for example, just that question right there, what part of you has to walk this fine line between looking at this person and saying, well, that was ignorant, or that was just something that you don't know yet about me, or maybe you're just still on your own learning curve about how to address people of this issue. But do you find that difficult? Sort of like when somebody says something like that to you, and you say to yourself, well, I don't really have a boyfriend, girlfriend, but partner is what I would be comfortable with. In your mind, what are you left with in terms of like dealing with somebody like that? Or how do you prevent yourself from like maybe getting into a bad mind frame about how to talk to people?
I mean, personally, I don't get into a bad mind frame at all. I mean, I realize that, you know, being married to a woman or having a girlfriend in my younger years, I mean, you're very much in the minority and people work on majorities. That's normal because we all make assumptions. That's how we live our lives. So it really doesn't offend me in any way. Some of the most sensitive, kind-hearted, wonderful people have asked me, about my husband or my boyfriend when we first met. And, that's something that it was my learning process, like how to answer that question. And I feel very comfortable in it now. And I mean, how someone then reacts, that's different, right? That's on them. But simply asking or assuming, I think, is not a big deal.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. It's not a big deal. I'm not hurt or offended. The main thing is I have to evaluate in that moment, is this a good teaching opportunity, or do I need to let it go right now? Like if I have the opportunity, if it's like a one-on-one conversation, we have the time, I'd love to take the opportunity to explain to someone what non-binary means to start with, because most people don't know that. And then say, yeah, I have a partner who's, and explain it if I have the opportunity. But sometimes, like, say in the middle of a class where it's not even relevant and there's like 40 people listening, do I really want to A, out myself, and B, teach all about this in this moment? So yeah, it's not offensive. It's just, I have to make a quick decision of, is it worth taking the time now to explain it? Or am I just going to, worst case scenario, allow myself to misgender my partner for the sake of an easy conversation?
Right.
And sometimes that's something I have had to do. And there are also worst case scenarios where I'm talking to someone who I have reason to believe would be transphobic or homophobic, and then I just have to misgender my partner. Whereas if I heard them use the word partner, I'd know. I don't even have to worry about it.
Yeah, you have to assess the context. Like there are some parts of the States that Jen just won't hold my hand. And like you say, like, how are you just on the train with an Obachan who's like, oh, you have a cute kid and blah, blah, and but at the same time, I don't know, Xander, if you get to this situation yet, but I feel that, at first I was very conscious of the question, or I would very much be thinking like, do I correct someone now, or do I just let it go? And now these days, I forget all the time to, like, tell someone that at the right moment. For example, like we went to some immigration lawyers the other day, and we're sitting there, and the immigration lawyer disappeared for a while, and I was like, oh, you know what, I forgot to tell them that my partner was a woman. I mean, we're both sitting there, we're both women. Wow, that probably complicates the immigration law, but I just it's so normal to me now that I forget to mention it sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, there was,
Go ahead.
yeah, there are points where I would at it. Like I was living in Boston in a fairly liberal area. I just didn't have to think about it or worry about it. Living in Japan, I feel more of a need to explain myself more often.
Okay, I just wanted to point to some good questions we got in the chat. Mary was asking, I teach mostly little kids, and one of my basic questions is, how many brothers and sisters do you have? That she asked for the kids. Should I not teach the words brother and sister? Because some people may not be able to answer or may not want to come out. What do you guys think? Or should she use how many siblings?
May I? And while the others are thinking, I think teaching the word itself is fine. It's part of English vocabulary, certainly at this point, just like teaching the word male and female, woman and man. But when you put people on the spot and say, well, how many brothers and sisters do you have, Taro? And Taro actually doesn't have any brothers and sisters, probably okay for him. But when you're sort of putting everyone in or putting one particular student in a spotlight, I think that's a little bit different from teaching the word in a Quizlet set, or maybe putting it as an exercise to fill in the blank. That's a sort of a private moment where you can say, well, it means this in that language, but asking them a particular question where they might have to say more than they want to, I think that's something that might be considered. Now, I'll give you the frame of mind I had about this. It's kind of a humorous story. friend of mine told me that when they were teaching in China back, in the 2000s or so, that this one guy who just showed up in China to teach English had a class, and one of his first questions was, "Okay, everybody, tell me about your brothers and sisters." This is China in the 2000s. There
One
are
child
no brothers and
policy.
sisters. No one has any brothers and sisters. There are no uncles and aunts, right? So, and just that kind of situation, like know where you are kind of thing, and asking about brothers and sisters. The word itself is fine. The word exists, but that moment, right?
Mm.
And,
Yeah.
David, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
David added in the chat, I teach sibling, the word sibling, in addition to brother, sister, and usually use sibling when I use that, you asked that question. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like you say, it's a word, it's an English language word, and I think it's absolutely fine to teach. When we were talking about this, it brought up in my mind something that I thought was not so fine, which was a friend of mine has his son in an English language school, kind of English kindergarten here. And he went to observe a class, and the teacher was teaching clothing for kids, and they was holding up flashcards, dress, and as teachers want to be, they want to be funny, right? So they were like, "This is a what?" And everybody goes, "Dress." And then he was going to like one of the kids, "Would you wear this?" "No, because you're a boy." "Would you wear this?" "Yes, because you're that kind of thing." I think is you're putting your own values on the children. That's not as good. But teaching vocabulary, I think, is fine.
Yeah, it's the way you teach it. Xander, anything to say on that topic?
Yeah, I agree. They need to learn the words. They're important English words to have. But I like what David said with when you're asking the question directly, using gender neutral language is great. And then probably in the answer, they'll have the opportunity to use the words brother and sister.
It just occurred to me, I should definitely teach the word sibling when the topic of brothers and sisters come up, and then bring this up. It's like, you might want to use siblings when you're talking to people, because this may be the case. I remember I was talking to Xander, you were telling me about your sister, and you did something wonderful for your sister. And then I was about to say, "Oh, you're such a good," and I don't know why I stopped. I was like, "Sibling."
Yeah.
That just felt right. It just felt right. So I think that reaction needs to come out quickly. And I want to make sure that it comes out quickly in my students as well. Okay, Linda gave us a message a while ago. "My mom has been living with a man for the last 10 years. They're not married. So I mentioned her partner, and she got really upset. Partner in her mind means a gay relationship." Interesting. Linda, can you tell us a little bit more? Let me, unmute. So that you
Linda says no, she can't.
Oh, she can't.
Yeah, she's probably in the kitchen.
Okay.
He does that.
Gotcha.
People do that.
No
Yeah,
camera.
No camera.
Okay. So I guess for some people of the older generation, the word partner still they have an image of a gay couple.
I also like significant other as a gender neutral word that has less of that connotation.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. And I kind of used to think that partner meant married partner. Is that just, am I just imagining things, or was it originally? Andrew, you know what? I'm going to just unmute everyone. Andrew, yes.
Yes, I think that if you're considering people from the older generation, like I think growing up, we did have that idea that saying partner was implying that it was a gay couple. But I found that in the last 10 to 15 years that this term is now not really seen that way. But some of my Japanese students have said that, they have said like, well, I don't refer to my wife as my wife. I refer to her as my partner. And, back 15 years ago when we got married, if I said that, I thought, oh, people will think that I'm a gay male, but and there's nothing wrong with that. But the point is that I think recently, even in Japan, that students are more aware of that term. That's all that's my comment.
Thank you. Yeah, Chiyuki was saying that in the chat as well. Japan is way behind yet, but I would like to share the fact that teachers and children are more aware at primary level of education. Yeah, I heard at Japanese elementary schools, they've stopped using the san-kun differentiation. They call everybody san, and the kids just, because that's what they were taught, they're like, oh yeah, this is the new normal now. So.
May I ask a question a little bit about so sometimes I do workshops for high school teachers, and one of the topics that we talk about is this. And you know, a lot of the new teachers that are coming in on the JET program or ALT programs, they want to include things like single parent. Now, I'd like to put that out to the group that when we say that single parent, are we talking about single mother or single father? And how does everyone think about that?
The use of the term single parent?
Single parent, and that the idea that in maybe, I think that in society today, that single parent might just be seen as being a single mother, that they have only the mother and not the father. Or, I mean, a single parent, I think is a very neutral term. I'm just saying that, but a lot of younger, I said to them that, well, to those teachers, like, which does that, when they say single parent, do people think that it is a single mother rather than a single father? Maybe I'm confusing everyone, sorry.
Yoshi?
So I think the main point here is, just like partner, single parent is any kind of parent, and partner is. So I think we need to teach people that. We need to raise awareness of that point, that a partner can be a married partner, it can be a gay partner, it can be a non-gay partner, and a single parent can be a man and a woman. But I don't think that people can get offended, you know, by, like, I think, well, they can get offended in the case of Linda's parent, who gets offended, but I don't think Linda used the word incorrectly. I think that's the main point. Yes. And, you know, I list my gender pronouns. Perhaps people think that I'm transgender, but that's fine. You know, like, I think that the point is, so somebody thinks you're gay because you say partner. If that bothers you, I guess it's kind of on you, right? It's not really on the others. And for things like single parent, or I think Mel mentioned in the chat that, you know, somebody corrected you and said it should be partner, not husband. I think, no, I mean, you get to choose that, right? As long as your husband is comfortable being called a husband and you want to call them a husband, then there's no reason for you to refer to them as your partner. I don't know. That's all I wanted to say.
Did you have a point earlier on, Yoshi? I think you were kind of trying to raise your hand earlier.
No, I don't know.
Okay, all right.
No.
Okay,
can I share my opinion because I'm a single mom? I didn't really get kind of offended if somebody called me single mom, but I was really aware that some people think that the single parent means single mom. And that was kind of like a teachable moment, to be honest. Yeah, you know, and I would say, well, it could be single dad, single mom. It doesn't really mean, you know, single parent means, because my daughter went to a hoikuen, so there are many single parent, you know, at hoikuen, because both of us have to work, right? Well, not only the working mom or working dad, you know. So yeah, it was more children at the hoikuen were really aware. And then there's a really interesting kind of like a movement at the primary school. They don't call the family name anymore because family name could be changed depending on the marital status. I thought it was really thoughtful in a way. And then, you know, names might not be changed. So So my daughter was always called Momo instead of Yanase-san.
Mm.
And some, some kids change the names, and then every time they change the name, depending on the circumstances, it could be pointed out like, oh, why did you change your name? And it could be a good time to discuss about that, but for first and second graders, it would be a little bit tough to articulately discuss that stuff. So yeah.
Thank you, Chiyuki.
Something.
Sure.
Chiyuki, if I may have a follow-up question, how far up the K-12 sequence do you know this is a policy at now? Is this just at K6, or does this go to junior high school or high school?
The all elementary school.
Also not.
I'm
yet
not sure about the junior
Okay.
high or senior high. Probably junior high and senior high, they could articulately discuss that stuff. And they're more, I don't know, rational about that. But yeah, especially primary schools.
Thank you.
And I think,
Melody, go ahead, Yoshi.
no, I was just going to say along those lines, we can all raise awareness about those kind of things at all moments. Like at Hoikuen, we often have people who speak to the mama tachi. They talk about, mama tachi-san. And, there's a papa right there. And so those are moments that you can be like, there are fathers present here too.
Yeah, and then instead of saying hobo-san, it's like hoikushi, because there are many male, nursery school teachers now, which is really good. I really love that to see that. Yeah.
I love that Japanese words are becoming gender neutral. It's a good trend. Yeah. Melody, you wrote something in the chat. Can you share this with us? The whole thing about not using last names?
Yeah, well, I like that idea, because when we enrolled my daughter in elementary school, when we first fostered her, there was this issue about her name, and the school wanted to call her by my husband's name. And I advocated for her, and she wanted to keep her last name. And I thought that's fair, because that is really the only thing she has. That's hers. So we had to negotiate that with the school. They thought it would be easier. And there was a little bit of bump, and it was a little bit rough for my son at the beginning, but that ended fairly quickly. So yeah.
So for the school, they thought it would be easier just because the parent's name and the child's name would be the same in terms of, so it's purely just for their convenience.
Yes.
But it worked out in the end. That's good. Okay. Well, I would like to move on to now, what can we teachers actively do? So we've been talking about the don'ts and things we want to avoid. Is there any other things we should avoid before we move on? Jose, are you pointing to something or just stretching?
No. I'm working out my Moderna arm. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's right.
I did it subconsciously. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Okay. So what are some things that we can, as teachers or university admin, can do? Any good university school policies you've heard? Yes, David.
Oh, sorry, I was just trying to find my mute button. Hi, Rody. Thank you so much for all this, by the way. I'm really enjoying hearing everybody's viewpoints. I just, as just a university teacher, I mean, I just, like people have been saying, finding these teachable moments in the textbooks. The textbooks have all of these assumptions usually, although every once in a while they'll surprise me. You know, I've run into like a woman couple in a textbook before and things like that. And so I'll bring it up and talk about how that's just nothing terribly out of the ordinary. It's perfectly fine. I try to include affirmations and things like that at the ends of the class, like in my PowerPoints, things to remind the students not to stress out too much and so on. And every few of those, I'll mention things like, you know, you're accepted here. You're accepted for who you are, and I'll make it clear that I don't try to, you know, make it like and by the way, if you're gay, or it's not like that. But I don't want to dance around the edges of it too much. I want to make it clear that yeah, I am talking about that in addition to anything else. And I make sure to remind or let people know about Fukuoka's Pride parade, which was helped. The original one was some of the main organizers were some of my students from Fukudai back in a few years ago. So and things like that have got students to come up to me and talk to me after class, and about, they'll say, oh, by the way, I think maybe I'm bi, or something like that. And so I'm like, oh, sure, yeah, let's talk about it. So.
That's great. That's great that they feel comfortable enough to talk to you about these things and you make it clear. Melody, you have a sign on your office door that says I'm an ally. Can you tell us about that?
I just found it on the internet. I think
okay.
it was an idea. I got it after I saw Yoshi's talk a few years ago in person. And I found it on the internet. It was a sign that said, I am an ally. And, I'm not, it's cute. It says, I'm not gay or lesbian or bisexual or any of those other things, but I just think everyone should just be treated equally or something like that. And then it says, at the end, it says, have a gay day. And it's so cute. And so I printed that out and I stuck it on my office door. So because some students have come out to me. 2 students came out recently in essays because we did a class about gender and representation in textbooks. So, and then one of the students, which is fantastic, one of the students came, she wanted to be in my Zemi because of that, because she wants to extend the research. Yeah. So, yeah, I just think, yeah. Sorry, that's a long way around.
No. And
that's so
that was
great.
part of a textbook already, gender and representation, or
No,
was that
that's
something?
I teach a class it's called Principles of Language Teaching, and it's for students who want to become teachers. And it's based on research I did for graduate school. And yeah.
Does anyone know where we can link to that sign? Because that would be great.
I'll try and find it and I'll link it in.
Just to say that I kind of got out of teaching, and now I'm the coordinator of the Global Center at Kagawa University. And this is the reason why of course, in the classroom when I was teaching, there were opportunities that there were situations that students came up to me and discussed and were open about these things. And 3 years ago, I actually had at Okayama University, I was teaching advanced presentation class. And one of my students, transgender students, actually came out in the final presentation. And it was just so wonderful. The impact was amazing, because like the first slide was a photo of this high school baseball player, a boy, and then she said, do you know who this person is? And the whole presentation was about stigmatizing people and labeling people. And at the very last slide, that slide came up again and said, do you know who this person is, and who this person could be? And they're saying, oh, it's a baseball player. And then the last line was, no, it's me. And it was just like, whoa. And it was just so amazing. So, and in the Global Center, I think that because we are trying to foster that kind of having students just come in, and I think being that kind of teacher slash helper in any way, that I want to have that openness. And I think that when we start getting students to come in, I think that the opportunity for me to encounter these kind of situations is going to increase. And I really want to be supportive of those students in the best way possible. So yeah, that sign would be great. I have to get approval though, I think, but we'll see. Thank you.
Thank you for that story. It's really encouraging. Yoshi?
Yeah, I mean, so many thoughts have come up just from what you have all said. As for the sign, yes, you need to get approval for visible support in institutions. But a wonderful thing, I've told this story so many times, is, we all make our own personal choices for our own visibility. And this ex-rugby part-time teacher who looked very sort of large and frightening had a little pride sticker on the back of his laptop. And, I did interviews with LGBTQ students over 10 years, and they all were mentioning this tiny little sticker on this guy's computer. I don't think he ever had a conversation about it, but that, we undervalue how much that kind of visibility can make a difference to people. I think having a visible anti-discrimination policy, not just an LGBT, but all kinds of discrimination somewhere on your curriculum, on your syllabus is a nice way to go. I think that, as Xander mentioned before, having an opportunity, some kind of worksheet in the first, second, third week where students can, where you ask open questions about, your name, your pronouns, anything you would like to tell me, anything, you want to tell me that I should know about you. And I also, when Andrew was talking, I was thinking about, the role of English and how, you mentioned this situation in a presentation where someone chose to come out, and I've had that too. And I think students have said to me, I am freer to say these things in English. Yeah,
Yoshi, I mean, I was going to say that. I've been teaching for quite a while here in Japan, and how many times have we heard, maybe everyone's heard this, that I feel free. I don't feel bound by society when I'm speaking English opposed to speaking Japanese. And I say, I know that it exists, but I'm so happy that you're sharing this. And maybe English is that medium to get, to be yourself and live, express yourself. And I just say thank you to the students, and I say, continue to study English. So that's
and it's not intrinsically necessarily even English. It's just because it gives you a little distance, right? It's not your first language, maybe. I mean, we all know it's easier to swear in other languages, right? Because you don't have that sense of like, it doesn't feel as close. Or my students.
One point that a student said to me, which was really, really good, was the fact that in English, we often use the personal pronoun I, which in Japanese is not often used. Of course, it's not, when people speak, it's more like a general we kind of thing, and then they drop the pronoun. But when they started to learn, like, oh, I can say I, and identify themselves, it really empowered them to express their true, maybe their true feelings. I don't know, but yeah. So that's linguistically, that's a good point. Yeah. Sorry.
Jose, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if Yoshi wanted to comment on the use of pronouns in Zoom, because it was what she was talking about. If you remember, Sachiko, the first meeting we had with Yoshi about using those pronouns that maybe changed mine.
Well, I mean, it just came from a story from one of my colleagues, actually. We were talking about, I don't know what we were talking about, but she has her pronouns listed on her email signature. And I said, why did you do that? And she said, one of her relatives was a transgender individual who had received an email from someone who had listed their pronouns and was explaining to my friend how that made them feel and how it made them feel sort of like seen in a way. And then my friend and I were discussing that, and rightly or wrongly, I'm not sure, but we were saying, maybe it's similar to gender neutral bathrooms. And, you know, if we all use the gender neutral bathroom, then it destigmatizes the usage of the gender neutral bathroom. If we all list our pronouns, it destigmatizes that usage. But I don't know, we should probably ask Xander if I'm totally off mark here.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Like I, as a transgender person, I'm never the first person to put my pronouns in my bio because I don't want to like out myself. Like if I'm in a Zoom thing and no one else has their pronouns, I won't put mine because I don't want people to be asking me if I'm transgender. But if there's a cisgender ally who takes the initiative and puts their pronouns there, then I immediately feel so much safer. And I feel like not only can I put my pronouns there, I can also, you know, come out as transgender if I wanted to. It really makes a huge difference just seeing someone else using their pronouns there. It really makes it into a much safer space. So I really appreciate it when people do that.
So I guess if anybody's teaching online this in the upcoming semesters, maybe the teacher can take initiative and put the pronouns in the Zoom name. And we also need to explain why the pronouns are in there for Japanese students who may not be aware of this trend. I think that's really important. Okay, we have a message in the chat from
Sachiko, before we do, just because you mentioned about putting them into the Zoom name, this is something that I encountered personally from the difference between my professional account and my Zoom institutional account. Zoom put in a feature that allows you to actually do what you can see here with Yoshi's name and Andrew's name. But that is standard across a professional personal account. But if the institution, even though you've got a really high level account at an institution, if the institution does not enact that feature, you cannot access that. So if I may just share that really quickly, I want to show other people where you can actually access that. If I can find, here we go. So if you go to your Zoom account and you go to the profile page, see that profile tab in blue over there? Go over here and you'll see your profile and click the edit button. Click the edit button. Now, if the institution has enabled you to put your pronouns down, it'll simply have a field here that says your preferred pronouns, and you would select them from a pop-up list. If you do not have that, then the easiest way around it is to permanently put it in your display name. And that will permanently appear every time you open or attend a meeting. The simplest way is just to put them into your display name. And don't forget that you have to save down here, just below the name information, and everything will be fine.
Okay. Thanks for that, Jose. And I just want to read off, David, you put your pronouns in your Twitter bio. Was that to be supportive or?
Yeah, somebody on Twitter mentioned it and was saying how they were doing it just to normalize that. And you know, I'm a cisgender bi man, but you know, I thought I'll go ahead and put that in there. And yeah, just so that it might make it so that people feel more comfortable putting their own, and just to normalize it. And also, you know, there's the additional advantage of every once in a while some idiot will make a comment and say, you have pronouns in your bio, ooh, and okay, block.
That's funny. We have another comment from Ms. Holsoya. What's your first name? Jay. There's quite an awareness and interest around this topic, by some of my students, but we have some students who want to conceal, they want to hide that they have changed gender. They may request not to have their enrolled name known in class. I feel discussing gender in class can upset some students. Yeah, that is something I worry about too. Like we want everybody to feel included, that it is safe to talk about it here, but we also don't want to force or pressure students to come out about. Yes, Xander.
Can I talk about that a little bit? I think it's a really great point and a very legitimate concern. Like, how do I create a welcoming environment without kind of forcing people to out themselves. I think that names and pronouns should be pretty much always okay to share because they're not just gender identity, they're how you refer to each other in the classroom. Like in most classroom situations, you can't just avoid having a name and pronouns. They're necessary for your interactions. But it's important to understand that some students might choose to use a different name and pronouns in class than what they identify as, maybe because they're not ready to be out or don't want to be out in that environment. So yeah, it might be that even if a student has come out to you as a teacher, they might still say, okay, but use these other pronouns in class. But I feel like it's never an issue to ask students to share their names and pronouns, or I guess it might be better to phrase it as what name and pronoun you want to use in this class. That puts less pressure on them to like reveal their whole life story. It's just, okay, in this class, we need a name to use with each other and we need a set of pronouns to use with each other. And I feel like asking that much shouldn't upset students or minimizes the amount they can feel upset by that.
Okay, thank you. And earlier we were talking about how, Xander, you would be asked the same question by different teachers in different classes, and your answer might sometimes be different.
Yeah, like when I was in small classes, like where we all knew each other really well, I might be more willing to use the name and pronouns that really match my identity. But when I was in a giant 100-person lecture, I didn't want to deal with all of that, so I just wouldn't. And to clarify, I came out in high school. So for most of high school and college, I was pretty openly transgender, but it really depended on the class. Like I was out in some classes, but not others. And at the time, I did not look like this. If I did not tell people I was transgender, they would assume I was a woman, no matter how I dressed. So yeah, it had to be, if I wanted anyone to use the right name and pronouns, I had to be the one to tell them. And generally, if teachers gave me the opportunity to tell them, I would. If they brought it up or they had an ally sticker or any of that, I would bring it up. And if they didn't create that welcoming environment actively, I probably wouldn't.
Well, how did you feel? Did you feel that if the teacher did ask, they were being a little bit too nosy, or did you welcome the teachers asking that?
I was never bothered by teachers asking. However, there were some times where a teacher asked and they were open and welcoming and inviting, but for other reasons, I did not come out to that. Where even when they created the best environment, I just wasn't feeling it. Like I was in a Japanese class in college where my teacher was pretty welcoming, but I had reason to believe that some of the students in the class weren't. And rather than deal with that, because it was a very like international class, people from different countries, not necessarily as used to LGBT things, and it seemed like not a great place to be out. So even though the teacher was welcoming, I didn't feel welcomed by the students, so I just kind of kept it to myself. So even when you're doing your best as a teacher, there still are situations that are out of your control, so don't worry about it, it's fine.
Yoshi?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that particular question about, whether to discuss gender or not in the class. What I would say is don't shy away from those topics just because you're worried about someone in the class, because there are ways to get around it. I teach gender and I also teach a topic on identity. So for example, in the identity class, the way I teach it, we talk about race, we talk about, Hafu kids, we talk about being gay, we talk about being agender, we talk about being transgender. And sometimes I will have, you know, a biracial student in the class. And I have had a biracial student who is perfectly comfortable taking the stage and talking for themselves, and other students who want that, you know, basically they don't want to be put on the spotlight and asked, you know, what do you think? But I think the key point is to take that student and say, look, I'm going to be talking about this topic. And I think that, you know, I have reason to believe that that means I'm talking about you to some extent. Now, do you want to take the voice? Do you want to share your voice? Or if not, is there something you would like me to say? Like, what should I be teaching? Is there something? And that's come up with transgender students and gay students, some of which who have been fantastic resources for the class, because they say, hey, you know, I want to talk about this. And I say, great, you know, because that's even better than me talking about this. And some students who say, I just really don't want to talk about this. And I say, okay, well, this is what I'm planning to say. Is that okay? Is there something you would like to add? Is there something I'm misrepresenting? But I wouldn't avoid the topic. I think that's the main thing.
Jose, you have your hand up?
Just a couple of comments from Adam in the Facebook live stream. Interesting one. Long names can also make the pronouns invisible. Jose's and Sachiko's pronouns are truncated. Didn't realize that, but that might show up in the recording, but it doesn't actually show up in the Zoom room. So if you're thinking about a recording, that might be a different problem. For example, I could just take out my middle name, which actually I don't really want to do. Anyway, and then he goes on with another one, and another one just appeared from Alex Burke. So a second comment from Adam Jenkins. Pronouns are often listed in pairs, he, him. Is there a reason for this to make it more obvious that they're pronouns, perhaps? Yoshi, did you want to answer that one?
Nope, I'll hand that one to Xander.
Okay. Xander gets this.
I don't know.
Me neither.
As
That's
far
why
as I know, it's just convention. Like that's what people do. I mean, I know there are other pronouns other than he, him, she, her, they, them, like other pronouns that people might not be as familiar with, where you might really want to see all of them. Like, I don't know.
The only other one I can think of is they, them.
There's also like other ones like z, them, there, or z, here. There's other ones. I feel like they were popular when I was in high school, but they've kind of become less popular and have been replaced by they. Yeah, but I do have known other people who use other pronouns where it's helpful to see all of them, like something slash something slash something. But other than that, no, I don't know why, other than just convention. We write the first two of the 3 English pronouns.
Okay, just before we get to David, there was a comment from Alex Burke's. Alex Burke's comment is starting lesson 1 by modeling how you use your own pronouns on the board, then putting examples of he, him, his, the 3 pronouns, he, him, his, slash, she, her, hers, slash, they, them, theirs in a sentence helpful? I'm cis and an ally, but is this too confronting? I've explained this to students and how sun, the Japanese sun, gets around this issue, and that I like the neutrality of it.
Well, I think he, him, his starts to sound like a grammar lesson.
Yeah,
I feel like one or two is enough.
Yeah. Right.
I think the key point is when it comes up, I don't know if I'd do it necessarily like in the first, second lesson, but, you know, I teach they as a neutral pronoun, and I teach it for many situations, not just, you know, when somebody wants to be called they, but also when you simply just don't know if the writer is, you know, how they identify, or, you know, you're looking at a cute baby and you don't know how they identify. I mean, I just teach that we can use they as a singular pronoun. I think that has some value.
And I think it's important to teach that they and them come up, because it's been coming up a lot in news articles, and people are confused. It's like they, but the verb is singular, is for singular. So I think we need to explain that either way. David, you had your hand up.
So I was just going to say, when talking about, you know, having he, him, or she, her, I have seen on Twitter a fair number of people have kind of a combination, like she, they. And I I haven't really asked about that so much, but I've just been kind of assuming that these are non-binary people who might sometimes go a little bit back and forth, or just be like, she is okay, they is okay, both of them are fine, or something like that.
Yeah,
That's just my assumption. I haven't really asked about that so much.
yeah, you're absolutely right. There are people who use more than one set of pronouns. I've also met people who are comfortable with any pronouns, use he and she and they. So yeah.
When
you're
I
right.
was at a conference in New York, in the same building, there was a conference going, this was just before COVID, and it was like the last conference I went to. And there was another, there was an education, it was like inclusion and education conference was in the same building. And I got some big buttons for pronouns from them, like, pin-on buttons for that. And so I wore those to my classes just to, and have something, oh, let's talk about these,
Which brings us to the next topic. What is a good way to kind of bring this topic up in a class? Do you guys have any strategies or things you've done? Like for example, in my study abroad prep class, I have several lessons titled just political correctness or sensitivity. And one of them is the LGBTQ issue. Jose, what do you do?
Not me. I wanted to point out that we actually, before the show started, we collected a series of documents from Yoshi and Sachiko, and we put them up on OTJ. And because people have told me before that, Jose, I know you said that, but I can't see it on my OTJ timeline. The way that Facebook runs its timeline is a little bit confusing. So I wanted to just take a second and make sure that everybody knows where to get these documents. So for example, oh no, that's my Finder. Okay, no, I don't want you to show my Finder.
This is being streamed live.
Yikes, yeah, I don't know. I don't think there was anything that was compromising there. Right here. Okay, so if you go to OTJ, this is actually a little known feature of Facebook groups, but there's a way for you to upload files, specifically the ones that don't appear properly in comments and stuff, by going across here where there's about, discussion, guides, etc. And in the more, click down here for files. And this is where you can upload files and download previously uploaded files by title. So go to files and you'll see all of a list of all of the files. And the ones that were, the ones that were listed up from March 26, these 4 files, plus, why isn't Melodies up there? Because I know I uploaded that. Let me just refresh that. Yeah, there it is. There's Melodies there, and I think I should probably re-upload that because the name itself just uses a long number. But that's Melodies' image that she put up on that poster she put up on her door. In any case, this is where you can access the files, and there is which one of these, Sachiko or Yoshi, is the one that's about a lesson plan? Was that from Academic Skills? Yeah, maybe
Academic
this one,
Skills is the one Yoshi prepared for her own class, and it's great visual. It has an umbrella to separate which words refer to gender identity and which words refer to sexuality, because a lot of people do get them confused. So that's great for class. The one that says, let's see,
LGBTQ, let me show it again.
Vocab definitions, that's really long and extensive, but not very visual. I just copy and pasted that one, version 2. And I just want to point out, I just want to take this opportunity to mention one word that I think as teachers in Japan, we should know, exagenda. I didn't know this word either, but it refers to, Xander, correct me if I'm wrong, what is it? Exagenda is the Japanese word for?
Non-binary gender?
Non-binary.
Okay.
I'll put it in the chat. Literally X as in the letter X, exagenda is what they use in Japanese. And in case you don't know, the word cis we've been using is cis means when your gender identity and your physical body match. So yes, those we put in the Facebook page. Also, we put up a document called Advice from Pride Scholars, and it's just a bullet list thing of do's and don'ts, simplified. And another one, WS, meaning worksheet, simple ways to include LGBTQ material. It's for all age levels, all subjects, not just English. So please take a look. Melody, you had your hand up. You're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry, this is something that I put in the chat and I wanted to ask about, and I guess now's a good time. Are we, like at my university, I think they're changing the policy to use the acronym, I don't know how it's pronounced, SOGI, instead of LGBTQ, because it encompasses sexual orientation and gender identity, as because LGBTQ is pretty much just mostly focusing on sexual orientation to show. So what do you think the trend is? Where are we moving toward? Both, one or the other?
Oh, what do you guys think? I've never seen SOGIE, Xander, the youngest
I've
person here.
actually also never seen that. I'm familiar with Mogai, which I feel like might be similar, but
How do you
I don't
spell
actually. MOGAI, which is marginalized orientations, gender alignments, and intersection, I think.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So yeah, there's, I guess people might be moving towards this SOGIE.
This policy came out at my university to use these terms.
Is it a Japanese thing, do you think?
Yeah, I think it is a Japanese thing from my conversations with the diversity committee at my old university. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it is. And the discussions that I had around that were very interesting for me, with a lot of members of the LGBTQ community who are Japanese. There's often this discussion about like labels, are they useful or not useful, right? And members of the Japanese community often came down on the side of them not being so useful, and that we, want to be moving towards a label-less world. I have a differing opinion on that, but perhaps that's why this particular acronym is favored, because it's not really, it's not labels. It's not a collection of labels. It's just, sexual orientation, gender identity. It's more umbrella termish.
I just found this at ARC International in English. So there's both. I just did a quick Google search and I found both Japanese and English.
Wow. Okay.
Information on it. So
thank you.
Okay. I was just wondering if there was some kind of trend that I was missing.
So by show of hands, how many people have heard this used?
Which one? Soji?
Soji.
Soji-esque. Okay.
I did a quick Google search in Japanese. Soji. Yeah, sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression.
But I found it in English as well, so I don't think it's just a Japanese thing.
Although maybe that kind of raises the question. I don't know what Yoshi and Xander have experienced, but is there I don't know what you might think, but is there a gap between what the Japanese allies are doing in their classrooms and in their sort of policy changes, and what we as English teacher allies might be doing in our classrooms? Is there a gap, or is there any kind of a need for improved communication, do you think, in terms of what the Japanese allies are doing and what the English-based allies are doing?
I think there's, I hesitate to make any sort of broad generalizations, but from discussions with just a few Japanese people who self-identify as part of the community, I think there's a slight cultural difference between how people envisage the world becoming better. I think from my perspective, I very much always talk about, increasing visibility, increasing openness. Let's talk about it. Let's, discuss these topics. Some of my Japanese ally friends are more along the lines of let's not make a big deal out of this. And I'm not appropriately representing, you know, their goal, I think, because I don't share the goal. So I don't want to speak for them what they're trying to do. But I think that we approach sort of making the world better in a different way, maybe.
I've noticed a similar thing, and I actually kind of fall more on the Japanese side of it. One of the reasons I like living here in Japan is that visibility is not such a big thing here. Like, I don't want to spend my time being visible. I'd rather not be visible most of the time, actually. And they're just sort of quiet acceptance. Let's not talk about it too much. Why does it need to be a big deal? That sort of attitude, I think, is more prevalent here. And I don't even know if it's a good thing, but it kind of suits me and my personal needs. So yeah, I've noticed that trend as well.
I think it brings to mind two very different students to me. One who was this fantastic Japanese woman who, was very much advocating for a labelless world. Like, why do we have these labels? You know, we don't use these labels in other ways. They're not useful, they're divisive. And another one of my students who came from another country, who was a transgender male. And he said to me, you know, I really need these labels. People can talk about not needing them, but I personally want them because I'm transgender male and I am gay. And when I go into a transgender community, people question my maleness because I'm gay. And when I go into a gay community, people also question my maleness because I'm transgender. So I want to be around people who are transgender and gay. And the only way I can do that is by having that label. So, yeah, I mean, I've heard both sides and I think they're valid. So both sides are valid. And yeah.
May I share my Japanese kind of perspective? In my country, as a Japanese, I think I sometimes suffered from the group-minded kind of the society. If I have a different opinion, and usually I feel kind of isolated or, you know, denied or criticized. But on the other hand, it's a good way is that we kind of have discussion and well, I don't know if it's open-minded, but rather open to all different kinds of ideas. Like, for example, like even religions. We have very mixed, in a way, blur ideas. So I was thinking about this identity and kind of blur concept of Japanese people have. It sometimes works really well, you know. So then also accepting all their opinions in a way for the sake of group harmony. Sometimes we do that, but it works sometimes in depending on the topic. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I think you were talking about as well.
So in other words, Xander, do you feel, I don't want to say uncomfortable, but you feel comfortable in Japan. In other countries, do you feel pressure to say anything?
I mean, in America, I felt like because there was more awareness of transgender people, I was more often identified as a transgender person, or people would comment on it, ask me about it, which is fine. It was totally fine. And it's great to have that awareness. But also, I didn't want to talk about it all the time. Whereas in Japan, even if people maybe are thinking it, I don't think I've ever had anyone like ask me, oh, are you transgender? Like, it's just kind of
Hush, hush.
mind your own business sort of thing. And even like, so I had the experience of working in Japan as an openly transgender person before I passed as male. So like people would probably see me, think I'm a woman, but at work I went by male name, used male pronouns, and they were all just like fine. I don't know if any of my coworkers would consider themselves allies. I kind of doubt any of them did, but they just kind of minded their own business, just rolled with it, went with it. And that was great for me. It worked really well. Yeah, like objectively, I feel like those coworkers I worked with knew less about the LGBT community, weren't actively allies, but there was also no one who was actively against it. I get a lot more of that polarity in America.
Yeah.
Like in America, I've had coworkers who just refused to use the correct pronouns because they disagreed with it. Whereas I don't really see that in Japan. They just, because that would, you know, mess with the group dynamic. That would also be an issue here. Yeah, just it's less extreme. I see less active allyship, but also less like active transphobia. Yeah.
Yeah. Melody, you have your hand up?
Am I muted? I'm not muted.
You're
Okay.
good. You're
Yeah,
good.
we can hear you.
So I just, you know, I'm kind of seeing a global trend across everything. It's an enlightenment. And I think, because I do advocacy for foster and adopted kids in Japan, and just to be treated with respect and as an individual. And I think that that's kind of the thing, this kind of awareness, gender awareness, race awareness, all of these things, I think everyone is asking for the same thing. Please treat me as an individual. Please treat me with respect. And that seems to be a common, I just wanted to say it just seems to be like a common ground for all these things, or it's a common consciousness. I think it's a great part of evolution. And I think that, you know, in the future, we may not need the labels anymore. It'll just be, that's so-and-so. That's so-and-so. And we treat so-and-so with respect, and we don't care about their personal life. Yeah, just my thought.
Yoshi.
Yeah, I agree. This is the utopia that we are hopefully moving towards. And I also agree with Xander that, you know, there is less open hostility as well as less open acceptance. However, the reason I still advocate for visibility and dialogue in Japan, and the reason I sort of am very open about myself and my family and in educational and other environments, is because Japan is beautifully blurry in terms of the neighborhood, accepting slowly who we are, and hoikuen going, oh, okay, that's how it is. But it has very sharp lines when it comes to the law, right? Legally, I am not my daughter's mother, and I want to change that. So for those reasons, I think it's still worth some people who want to, and not everybody should, trying to, I think, bring these topics into the open in some ways, because some things I don't want blurry, although I love the word blurry. I really do. I think that does, it really softens and gives that soft feeling that I do have living in Japan, of this exactly, you know, what you described of a kind of warmth and openness to people for who they are. But at the same time, like, there are some hard lines that I would like to change. And
David, you have your hand up?
I was just going to say about the, you know, the categorical thing. I just wonder if it can just be both. If it can be like people can have their labels, but we also need to be reminding people that those labels shouldn't be too restrictive. Like if somebody says, you know, like, I mean, like, for example, I mentioned before that I'm bi, and it's very easy for me to pass as straight because I'm married to a woman, I'm in a monogamous relationship, and I have been for 25 years now, and so on. But still, even though I'm not dating men, I'm bi, and so it's like, you know, I'm not straitjacketed by that definition, by that label, you know, the other, you know, any other labels and so on. I mean, it's like, you know, okay, so I'm transgender. If somebody says that, well, what does that mean? I mean, that's going to mean different things to different people. And that's something that we need to really be aware of, that the categories don't have sharp lines.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times people try to shove us into, you know, different shaped pegs and holes and stuff like that. And that's something that we need to include when we're talking about this, I think, in classrooms as well.
I agree. I think it's important to teach these words to our students because they need to know what they mean if it comes up in a conversation, but also to tell them not everybody fits perfectly into these categories. You don't have to, you know, squeeze yourself into any category, and God forbid, don't force someone to talk about it. I think earlier, I think Yoshi and I talked about, you teach phrases to people who want to hide their identity. You teach them how to say, I don't want to talk about it.
Well, yeah, to everyone at the, you know, quite early on in most of the classes that I teach, we you know, we do that kind of collective rule creating thing that I think many teachers do, which includes, you know, actively share your opinion or whatever. But I also, you know, I include in that list, you know, be brave, be curious, ask questions, but also know where your own boundaries are and feel free to answer in these ways, like, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to participate in this discussion, you know, sorry, I'm not going to answer that question. Yeah, and I think it's very important to teach people how to opt out, right? You don't have to disclose these things.
Definitely, yeah. And I think today's discussion really showed that, you know, by trying to be sensitive to one community, we're also being sensitive to a whole bunch of other different people who are different. And I remember growing up in Japan in the 80s. I had just come back to Japan from New York, and everybody made a big deal. It's like, ooh, she's a gaijin. They called me ET. That was my nickname in junior high because I was foreign. They would call me export. It's terrible. I was trying to hide it. My first school, I was bullied so terribly. We had to transfer schools. My next school, I hid it. I wanted to hide the fact that I was raised in the US, so I didn't mention it to anybody. In English class, I dumbed down my English. It was going perfectly fine until my teacher outed me. She's like, oh yeah, she grew up in New York. I'm like, why the hell would you say that? And that just ruined everything. And from there, everything. So I feel like anybody who's different in Japan will appreciate the efforts that we make to be inclusive and sensitive. So I hope that this will help. Chiyuki, you have your hand up.
Yeah, well, just because you mentioned about the bullying, I was the one also bullied for different reasons. And then I was called gaijin as well somehow because my mom used to teach English, and then sometimes my pronunciation was a little bit weirdly, you know, North American or something like that. And yeah, children can pick up on that. And I was ridiculed or bullied or something like that. And when I think about diversity in so many categories and then leaving from the boxes, the socially constructed boxes, I really wanted to get rid of, then people can be much freer from that. And that was based on my experience as well, and talking with, you know, other people who shared. And I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you so much. It was so meaningful, and then I'm almost like so emotional today. But yeah, thank you so much. It was a really beautiful discussion, and I hope we can have more opportunities like this in many places in the social, and we don't really have to, you know, putting ourselves in the boxes anymore. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank everybody for contributing. I had no idea that so many people were going to have different experiences and different personal stories to share. This is great. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any last thoughts? Any comments, questions? Yes, Xander.
I just didn't really get a chance to talk about this before, but we didn't get a chance to talk about what to do when you mess up. Like
Ooh,
if
yes.
you in the classroom accidentally use the wrong name or pronouns or anything like that, which it happens, it absolutely happens. And from a transgender person who was recently a student, it's okay. We forgive you. But yeah, I just want to share the best way teachers have dealt with that with me. Like I recall in high school, I had one teacher who accidentally used the wrong pronouns in class, and she didn't make a big deal of it at the time. She just let the moment pass. And I was feeling awful. Like it feels bad to be misgendered. But then like after the class, she sent me an email apologizing, saying like she could talk privately if we wanted. And it was a very heartfelt, earnest message and private, not making a public show of it. And that private apology, private genuine apology meant so much to me. Like I still have such a strong memory of it. So yeah, just know that messing up, it's not the end of the world. And if you do, yeah, not drawing too much attention to it in the moment and, you know, bringing it up privately later is, I think, probably the best course of action. I don't know if other people have experience with that, but I just wanted to share that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I went to Xander as soon as I made my big mistake. Well, goof up, and I accidentally called a student son, even though he identifies as a male. And I was like, oh, what do I do? I sent him a private email, and Xander told me that was the right thing to do. So yeah. Yeah, so it came up several times today, as we're afraid to talk about these things because we don't want to accidentally out someone or accidentally pressure someone. I guess we just have to remember that, you know, it's okay to make mistakes. If you do make a mistake, always apologize in a private setting. And initially tell every student before you go into this topic, listen, next week we're going to be talking about this topic. If you feel uncomfortable, if there's anything you want me to know beforehand, tell me. I heard that some students in the US were doing that before they talked about race relations in classes where the students were predominantly white and there were a few Black students. They might feel put on the spot when they talked about, you know, Black Lives Matters and things like that. And I heard that that was one thing that a lot of teachers were saying, just giving students a heads up. Yoshi?
Yeah, while you were talking, I was also thinking, you know, what else is really important is to let the students know it's okay to make mistakes. You know, not just us, and tell students, look, you know, we want you to be sensitive. We want you to do all these things, but we also want you to remember that most of us are speaking in a language that is not our first one, and we're all going to make mistakes. And you need to, you know, give each other the benefit of the doubt. Those mistakes are probably not coming from an intent to, you know, cause pain. They're coming from just a mistake.
It's unintentional. It's not meant to be hurtful. Yeah, that's a very good point. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone. This has been a great, huge contribution from everyone. Thank you so much. And a lot of comments on the Facebook live stream chat as well. I hope that this will, I love Chiyuki's heart mark. I hope that this will lead to maybe like a workshop in the future. I mean, I know that Yoshi has given a lot of presentations, but Xander, you're a great speaker. You should definitely do something for us again. Thank you both, Yoshi, Xander, for coming today and sharing your precious, precious experience. And let's continue our learning journey, all of us. Yeah.
I wanted to say a personal.
Share. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to say a personal thank you to Yoshi and Xander for coming onto the show. Today was an example of what I have always wanted OTJtv to be, and I wanted to say thank you very much to everyone who came. Thank you all.
Yes, everyone for bringing different perspectives. Melody, for talking about your foster parent experience. Everybody, thank you so much. Thank you,
Yoshi?
thank you.
Yoshi?
Yes, Yoshi.
Can I do a shameless plug at this?
Yes.
Just because these topics are all to do with diversity and difference, I wanted to just tell people that I run a conference every year called Living on the Edge, which you may know about, where people come together to talk about diversity and difference in a very positive light, and how they've used it to, you know, come together and feel at home, you know, because our Japanese audience also, as I think Chiyuki has been mentioning, sometimes you have this sense of home or not at home. We all do, even if we're living in our own countries. So if anybody is interested in presenting or just attending, please, contact me. I will put my email in the chat here.
Do you have a poster that you can put in the Zoom chat?
I do.
Put it in.
Or
take-
Yoshi, feel free to put the living on the edge information directly in OTJ.
Okay.
And speaking of shameless plugs, or I don't know if your shameless plug is over, Yoshi, or
It's
Xander.
Wait,
Totally
what
Xander,
day?
Xander,
Wait,
your
what day
turn
is
for a
it?
shameless plug. Sorry, you got a shameless plug, Xander? No?
No. Sorry.
Okay. So Sachiko, before you go, speaking of shameless plugs, I want to mention that the next OTJtv will be with none other than Melody Cook. The first Saturday of April in the morning. Lots of things to talk about because Melody is into
Very
so
cool.
many things, as you can tell from what how she contributed so beautifully to today. So please, everyone, join us for that first Saturday in April.
Thank you. Okay,
Round of applause.
we're gonna do this.
Okay.
What is this one? I don't know this one. What is
I
this
don't
one?
know. Andrew started it.
It's a round of applause.
Round of applause.
Round of
Literally.
applause.
We're all being inclusive of Andrew's new thing.
Have to be inclusive of people who do dad jokes.
Yeah, and now let's all be inclusive to Jose by doing the Moderna arm stretch.
Moderna arm stretch.
Yes,
Up and
this is our
down
new
and
thing.
up
Point
and
to the
down.
life poster. Point to the life.
I have no poster.
And the
I was very lucky. I got away
The
with
Goju
very little
Kata shoulder
Moderna arm
thing, yeah.
actually. So it wasn't so bad.
No fever?
No, I was no fever. There's no elephant arm. It was just a sore arm, and I couldn't sleep on it for the first night and a half. Otherwise, I'm in pretty good shape. So get your vaccinations, everyone. Please do that.
Okay, and we have a lot of thank yous from the Facebook live feed as well. Namiko, Alex, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for participating. So thank you to everybody, and we will see you in the next session with Melody Cook. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Big wave to the